In Dungeons and Dragons, money usually works very simply. Copper pieces, silver pieces, and gold pieces. This is very convenient for gaming, of course, but for world building, it is not a very nuanced approach to the subject. In the eastern mountains of my world, the ancient mountain people technically have no currency at all, at least not in the way we think of currency. No shiny coins here. Instead, the mountain folk mostly barter, but even in a barter society, currency rears its ugly head. Barter can get really complex, involving 3 or 4 simultaneous exchanges between different people, and in these kinds of environments, people look for means of indirect exchange. Essentially, the group as a whole has to figure out a commodity that they can trade again, once acquired, in order to get what they really want. It doesn't need to be something everyone wants necessarily. There just needs to be a high enough percentage of people who will want this commodity more than any other. From here, it's only a short hop to a certain kind of revelation. A few people begin acquiring this good not to use it themselves, but to trade it again to acquire the goods they really want. More and more people copy this process, until the indirect trade becomes the norm. In essence, the group will have turned this commodity into money. In the eastern mountains, the commodity in question is dried figs, an important foodstuff that keeps well in the cool, dry mountain air. But figs aren't the only currency used in the mountains. There's also the sacred booze. The sacred booze is distilled corn whiskey at its simplest, and it's made, of course, by the sacred booze makers, who live in monasteries perfecting their art. Sacred booze is far more valuable than figs, and lasts much longer. A true sign of wealth is a plentiful hoard of sacred booze. However, its precise value fluctuates depending on the overall supply, but also on the specifics of each jar of sacred booze, its flavorings, level of distillation, overall quality. Each quantity of the stuff must be evaluated by a professional, who of course only accepts payment in sacred booze. The third and least common kind of currency in the mountain are beads. These beads are decorative and made of colorful glass. Each bead is blown into its proper shape, and then colored threads of glass are laid into them, producing beautiful striped patterns. Making them requires a great deal of technical skill on part of the glass blower, and so wearing them on beaded belts and jewelry is a sign of great prestige, wealth, and power. Outsiders also greatly value the beautiful handiwork, and so in trading with outsiders, belts and bracelets of beads are often used as the means of indirect exchange. A similar thing occurred in early American colonial history. Among the many tribes of the East, the inner spirals of channeled whelks, a kind of sea snail, were made into beads, from which belts would be made. Among the indigenous peoples, especially the Haudenosaunee, these wampum belts, as they were called, were a form of legal documentation. Messengers would wear wampum to signify they had the legal authority to carry messages. Treaties were recorded in wampum belts. In fact, the modern-day flag of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy is based off a wampum document that commemorated the Great Law of Peace. When colonists came, the wampum were repurposed as currency, and they were an important form of legal tender until the colonists produced too many beads, reducing the value of the overall supply. Perhaps one day the same will happen to the glass beads of the eastern mountains.